A class is like a blueprint for an object, and that means that every object in Dart is an instance of a class. In other words, a class provides a way for you to design more custom objects by combining different data types together. To create your own custom class, use the class keyword followed by its name, which should always be in upper camel case where the first letter is capitalized. Now, the code inside of a class doesn't actually get executed. In order to make use of the code, you need to instantiate or create a new object. We can do that by declaring a variable with the same type of the class that we just defined, then use the new keyword followed by the class name and parentheses. That creates a new object with a type of basic. But currently, since there's no code in our class, it doesn't really do anything useful. One nice thing about Dart is that we actually don't need to use this new keyword. We can just delete it altogether, and in fact, Dart will give us a warning with this blue underline that it's not required. That makes our code more concise, and it also makes classes feel a lot more like functions. Now, to make the class useful, we can add instance members to it. An instance member is data or functionality that is attached to each individual object. To create an instance variable, we can assign a variable inside of our class. Then we can reference that value with dot notation using whatever variable name we used when instantiating the class. But in many cases, you may want to pass data into the class like an argument to a function when instantiating it. For that, you'll need to define a constructor. A constructor is just a function that runs once when the object is first created. We're going to look at constructors more in the next video, but if you just want to pass some data into your class, you define a function with the same name as your class, then add this .variable name to reference a positional argument passed to the constructor. In this example, it will take the first argument passed to the class and assign that as its ID instance variable. So that's how instance variables work, but the other type of instance member that you'll want to define is a method, which is basically just a function that lives on each individual object. In the class definition, simply define a function like we've done in previous videos. The special thing to keep in mind here though, is that your function will automatically have access to any instance variables on this class. When an object is created, it might have data or state that changes throughout its lifecycle, and your methods will always have access to the current state. That's how a basic class works, but one other thing I want to point out here is that you might also have static methods on a class, which are also just functions, but instead of operating on a class instance, they operate globally. Notice how I'm calling a method on a class, but I'm not using the new keyword or parentheses to actually instantiate an object. The reason this is possible is because I've defined a static method on the class using the static keyword. That can come in useful for more rare cases when you have a global helper method that doesn't rely on the internal state of an individual object. At this point, I'd recommend that you play around by building your own custom classes. Then in the next few videos, we'll look at more advanced concepts related to object-oriented programming in Dart.